Hello, and welcome along to the stream this lunchtime today. First of all, wanted to pick up or mention again what I mentioned on Monday, which was if you haven't already, you should be signed up for Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest is I guess you can call it a competition, but it's an event that's run by a company called DigitalOcean in conjunction with some other folks. And basically the premise is that if over the course of the month of October, you submit a number of pull requests into any open source repository, and they are valid pull requests, then you get a free t-shirt at the end of it. You get some stickers and you get a free t-shirt. So it's open to anyone. I am taking part in it, and I believe I'm now at a point where I have done enough pull requests to get the free t-shirt. So I have done... Oh, what's that saying? You're almost there. You've submitted the 4... So long as your PR successfully passed the review period, they'll become valid. So I've got 4 days left until they become valid. So fingers crossed they remain where they are. The other one that I will point out that I happened to notice was that if you follow Cake.Recipe, who are a continuous integration hosted service, then they're running their own kind of mini event called Orbtoberfest. That if you submit any pull requests into any orb-related... orbs are pieces of functionality that you can run as essentially tasks within Cake.Recipe build. So if you submit a pull request into one of their orb repositories, then you can also get a free t-shirt. Now, the way that I chose to do it was I submitted pull requests into 4 of their orb repositories. So in theory, I should get both a Hacktoberfest t-shirt, one of which is similar to the one I'm wearing just now, and I should also get the Orbtoberfest t-shirt. So t-shirts all round. Hi Arthur, how's it going? So if you haven't already, sign up for one or both of these and get some free t-shirts, because free t-shirts are good, right? I pretty much live off of free t-shirts now. Okay, so where I was going to talk about today. So we're talking about Cake.Recipe again. Now, the pull request that I reviewed on Monday's show, which was... Let's bring it up. So, a community member had done some work, which was to begin separating Cake.Recipe from its very, very close coupling to AppVeyor. So, as I mentioned on the show last time, I did it deliberately. I mean, I am a big fan of AppVeyor. I use it as my default for most things. So when I first wrote Cake.Recipe, I basically had lots of if statements that said, if running on AppVeyor, do these things, and so on. So I'm struggling to find it now, but let me find the issue so that I can start talking about it. So we've got the code and we look at commits, then blah blah blah. Where is it? It was this one, 259. So this community member, Vihatsuru, which we decided was Vadim, he started the work of removing the coupling between AppVeyor and Cake.Recipe. Right? Now that started out as by simply having some defined types, so objects basically. So if we look at build provider, then he started breaking out this concept of having, well, here's the tag information, here's the repository information, here's some pull request information, here's some build information. Now, all of these things are needed within the other parts of Cake.Recipe. So it will make some determinations on whether it is a pull request or whether it's a tag or whether it's something else, right? So Vadim went through Cake.Recipe and found out all the pieces of information that are required, and then he updated appver.cake to use those interface values now, as opposed to directly saying, if running on appver, do something, right? But then what he did was he also created the exact same thing for Azure DevOps, or pipelines within Azure DevOps. So in theory now, we should be able to run Cake.Recipe on Azure DevOps using it as the main vehicle for doing the deployment, as opposed to kind of always having to do it on appver. Now, what I've done, or what I did last night, was I started playing. So let's duplicate this and look at Cake.Gitter. So Cake.Gitter is one of the add-ins that I am in charge of. So I set up a new project within Azure DevOps, specifically for Cake.Gitter. And I added a pipeline. And in that pipeline, I am now running. So if I go back and have a look at Cake.Gitter, I now have my appver.yaml file, which is the configuration for when I'm running on appver. And I also now have this Azure pipelines.yaml file, which is the exact same thing, but for when you're running on Azure pipelines. Now, the breaking change that I made in the last show, or last stream, was that this thing here used to say target appver. Good job on doing that. Thanks. I appreciate it. I made a breaking change where the main entry point to Cake.Recipe used to be a task called appver. Now that we're living in this multi-CI world, that wasn't going to fly. So we made a breaking change that said, rather than calling it appver, let's call it continuous integration. So I made that change on this appver.yaml file. And then in my new Azure Pipelines YAML file, I changed the target to be continuous integration. Now, with that done, and obviously pulling in the latest pre-release version of Cake.Recipe into this build, I'm now at a point where I have a working build on Azure DevOps that uses, so if we look at this is maybe a little bit small to see on the stream, but if we go and zoom in a little bit, what happens if I zoom in? That's not too bad. Okay, so you'll see on here, line 24, that it's using the Azure DevOps pipeline provider. So I know that Cake.Recipe is running, and it's using specifically the Azure DevOps pipeline provider here. And if we look at appver, and we zoom in here in the same way, then we will see here that this one is using the appver provider. So it's the exact same build, is running on two different CI providers, and they are, because they're using Git version, they are asserting the version number. So the asserted version number is 0.12.0 alpha 24, and it's published an artifact to appver using that. And then if we look here and we click on this again, then we should be able to see artifacts were published. So again, it's published an artifact with, again, it's stamped with the same version number that Git version is giving us. So it's kind of worked, right? Now, if we look at the CI build on appver, then you'll see that appver still did the publish of the myget packages, right? But if we go back here and look at the build output again, and go to the bottom of Cake build, then we'll see that the publish of myget packages, it ran, but I don't think it did anything. So if we scroll back up here and say publish myget packages, which is where? Let's do a little search here. Publish myget packages. Yeah, unable to publish the myget because the nested credentials are not available. So what that tells me is that the build provider is set up in such a way that even now when running on Azure DevOps, it will attempt to publish to myget, and it will attempt to publish to NuGet if the necessary credentials are provided. Now, that is something that's fundamentally different now between Cake.Recipe, whereas before, Cake.Recipe would only ever publish to myget or NuGet if you were running on AppVeyor. So it's now at least attempting that publish. But the reason it hasn't been able to do that is because the environment variables, i.e. the API key that we use to publish those packages to myget, isn't there, right? So we're one step closer to getting this to work. Now, in a real-life project, you would probably never want to have both CI systems doing the publish. You would still want to nominate one of them as this is the one that's going to do the publish, because, well, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Because Git version is a certain version number for each commit, then the generated version number is going to be the same regardless of whether it's on AppVeyor or whether it's on Azure DevOps. So when you try and push it to myget or push it to NuGet or push it to somewhere else, you're going to get a conflict with that version number. So you'd still only ever want to do the actual release portion of the work on one nominated. Now, the default is still that will always be on AppVeyor for me because, well, I mean, that's just how I work, right? But what I want to try is I want to remove at some point I want to remove the environment variables from my AppVeyor build and put them into my Azure DevOps build to test out that it all works from Azure DevOps as well. However, I then noticed that there's two little things that are kind of broken just now before we even get to that stage. The first thing is if we look at this output here, we'll see that the first task after setup was to export release notes and then show info. If we look at the same thing on AppVeyor, it's doing setup and then inspect code. So there's something wrong with the DAG, the directed acyclical graph, when it's running in AppVeyor compared to Azure DevOps. That's the first thing that we need to figure out. And we can probably see that in action here. So if we do a build here, then if the first step on this local build is, after the setup, is inspect code, then therein lies a problem. And what we need to do is figure out how to make that DAG, that directed acyclical graph, work in the same order in all the places. Now, the reason that is happening is because Cake.Recipe tries to be a little bit clever, and it messes around with the DAG at the point of building, which is not something you normally do, but there's good reason to do it in Cake.Recipe. But it's obviously broken. I need to fix it. And the second thing was that if we look at the artifacts again, if we scroll back up here, and we look at the artifacts, then we'll see that there are two artifacts here. One is the issues report, and one is the nupkeg, which is great. The other one, if we look at Azure DevOps, and we look again at the artifacts, so we click here, it says that there are two, but actually, if we expand this, it's got the two files in each thing. So something's wrong here. Now, I suspect what's wrong is that this first line here, although it's got the name of CakeGetter, that can be anything. That's some arbitrary value that you can say. You could call it artifacts, you could call it anything you wanted. And then this thing is the actual file, this thing here. Although it's not, look. So if I click on that, does that give me a nupkeg? That does. And if I click on that, does it give me a nupkeg? It does. And it will have renamed that to be 01. No, you see, look. Ah. So the first one is a zip file that contains everything contained within it. The second one are the actual individual files. Is that what it is? Yes. So if we look in here, this then has artifacts, which are the nutkegs in the HTML file. So this thing will be exactly the same thing. This will be issues report, zip file, which then contains the artifacts, which is the two things. So something's broken in the upload artifact portion of the code. So that's the first thing I was going to look at, because I think the DAG issue will take a little bit more fault finding and more me just staring at it. So for now, I'm going to try and fix this artifacts upload to make it not broken. So hello everyone who's joined in the chat room. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. What I'm looking at just now is I'm trying to figure out why the uploading of artifacts to Azure DevOps from Cake.Recipe is a little bit broken. And I suspect that it's going to be in this code here. So if we look at this code, there will be a method in here that is upload artifact. So upload artifacts is uploading into a thing called artifacts. So that's why we're getting that folder within it. So that's why we're getting this artifacts portion. So that part makes sense. And then it's uploading an artifact called with a file path and then full path. Okay, so where is this getting called from then? So let's have a little search for upload artifact. So we'll come to that one. That's the implementation. That's the implementation. That is just the setup of the task. Build provider is the interface, and then task is that one. So it is just here. No, that can't be right. There must be one in build as well, which is the actual upload. This one here is a task, and then this is the calling of it. Okay, so this is what we're interested in. So over here, we're calling upload artifact on the output HTML file if it exists. So the output HTML file wasn't uploaded, or it's maybe this one that it's referring to. So this is the... Yes, this one is the one that we're interested in. So it's calling upload artifact with just the HTML file. So it is just looking for a file path. Okay, fine. So it's uploading it to a thing called artifacts within a thing called file. So the question becomes, why is it duplicating like that? It's creating... How is it getting in there like that? I'm just very curious. Let's have a look at the actual log output and see if we can find the word artifact in here. Build artifacts. Creating report. So that's creating the report. And then the upload artifacts doesn't actually have any output in it, which is unfortunate. So that would have been in this task. Because then it's just saying for each package. Oh, hold on. No, it's not. That's correct. So it's looking for any files that end up in this one. So if we look at where it's been building, then GitHub, organizations, Cake.Contrib, Gitter, build artifacts. So it's looking for anything in packages. Oh, hold on. Oh, that could be problematic. What I'm looking at there is, I'm wondering whether that's duplicating. Because that is looking for anything within the packages folder and then iterating down into any nested folders. And then it's adding another file, which is NuGet packages there. So I think that one's wrong. That one wants to be that, I think. I'm not sure if that's part of the problem, but I don't think it will help. And then let's have a look at this one that's upload artifact. So this is on the tf commands upload artifact. So if we go up here and look at Cake build.net and look at the API for upload. No, what was it called? TF build, which is an ITF build provider. This one. That has a series of commands. That command is an I command. And then this one will have an upload artifact. And we're using this one. So this says the artifact name. I don't think we want to call that. If we look back at what this is doing. I went to the wrong place, sorry. If we look at what that's doing, then it treats this whole thing as the artifact. So using the file path, using the file name as the name of it, I think is wrong. So I think what we want to do is change that around slightly. I'm going to change that to be empty. Or am I? Yeah, I think I'm going to change that to be empty. And I'm going to change this to be artifacts. Anyone got any problems with that in the chat room? So what I expect that this will change to is that over here, rather than having cake.getter.dump tag, issues_report.html, we'll just have artifacts, and then contained within that, we will have the file and the issues report. And I think that will fix the issue. I think. And the second one where we're duplicating, I think, the contents of the file was also being problematic. So let's try this. And this was going to be related to the issue which was separating the two, which is 259. So GH259. 259. What we're trying to do here, we're attempt to fix artifact upload. Remove possible duplication of files found using get files, and also alter folder structure for generated artifacts. Okay, so we're going to save that. So this is a change to Cake.Recipe. So this, if I do a git status now, it will have that. So do a git push upstream with an M. And then let's put that up onto the origin as well. That will kick off a CI build for Cake.Recipe itself. So if we look at, it's lost in the Cake.Recipe, this one. This will kick off a build, and this will generate a new package on myget. And I'm going to need to get the number for that so that I can update my preprocessor directive in the Cake.Getter build. So setup's running, so that will generate the version number. There we go. So it's 136. So let's go back to Cake.Getter, and we will change this to be a 6. Now we won't push that yet because that package won't exist until this build completes and it's pushed the things to myget. So that has happened, and it's pushed some things to myget, which it did. So now if we go back to Getter and we say, let's just build, use latest Cake.Recipe, and that's just one change there. So let's commit that, and then let's push that one. So git status should have that. So git push upstream again, and git push origin. So now this should kick off 2 builds. One is our AppVer build. AppVer build should remain exactly the same as it was before, but the one that should be different, hopefully, is our Azure DevOps build, where the artifacts will be pushed differently. So let's see what happens, shall we? Any questions from anyone in the chat about what I'm doing, what I'm working on? Happy to field any that you might have. If this works, then we will need to start looking at the directed acyclical graph that Cake is creating, because something isn't working properly there. I'm doing magic. Thank you very much, Maurice. So let's wait for that to... I'm not sure how long the build actually takes. Let's look at the history to see how long the last one took. So it took 4 minutes. So we've got 3 minutes to shove in. Let's just wait and see. What's that individual CI tag? What does that mean? Curious now. So where's it got to? It's doing the cake build. It's doing the stuff with the stuff. It's doing the build of .NET Core. I noticed this here. I may have to enable the environment variable that takes off that telemetry. Because, well, why not? Let's wait and see what happens. So app there should be running, and it should not be affected by anything that we've done here. That is interesting again. Messages 56. How many messages was on this one? So it did. That's the other thing I noticed is that in spec code, when it's running on app there, is listing out a number of spec code errors, like literally hundreds of them. But the same build running on Azure DevOps doesn't have those errors in it. So I'm not entirely clear on what's going on there either. And I don't see that problem when I run it locally. So we go over here and look at artifacts, test results. Or does it? If we open this file up in Google Chrome, since we've all got that open, it does look. But they're all warnings. They're warnings, not errors. Warnings or suggestions. And they're all coming from inspect code. But these ones that are listed here, get our chat API. Is it there? Get our chat API. Warning, unused variable or convert if statement. See, that's not the same error. That's an actual error. I may have to speak to Pascal about that. I don't suppose he's on the chat. No, he's not. I'll need to speak to him about what's going on there. Okay, so we must be getting close to the end of this build now. So we scroll to the end. Where have we got to? We're doing the inspect code. Inspect code, I think, is near the end of this build. Fingers crossed. How long do we say it takes this thing? 4 minutes, 3 seconds, or 4 minutes 52. Must be close. Must be close. So app there is finished. And it's uploaded those two artifacts, which is what we wanted. And they've been marked with commit 25, which again is what we expected. This one, oh, come on. It's taking quite a while to run here for some reason. So that bear completed in 4 minutes 11, and this one's still running. It's getting there though. See, 396 inspect code issues were found on there, but those are all, I suspect, warnings and errors. And there's 401 on this one. there's definitely an inconsistency there. So again, the publish my get packages was attempted, but it failed because it didn't have the right access codes. So then it's finished. So if we click back here and look at artifacts, there's one published artifact. That's fine though, because that's an artifacts folder. And then in there, it has the two files that we're interested in. So one is the nupkeg, and one is the issues report. So I'm actually curious as to what's in there now. So if we go to this folder, and let's delete those files. I'm going to download this one, and I'm going to open it up. And there are 396, right? All warnings. There are warnings or suggestions. Fine. If we download this one and open that, then it has a number of 1,748. And they're all... Yeah. So if we select just the errors, the warnings, and the suggestions, 440. Oh, it's so confusing. It's the same code, exact same code, running on two different CI systems. And then, locally, we get a different value as well. So if we go back to here and look at this one, oh, it opened in Edge. So let's put it into the same browser. So, oh, it's not going to let me open with? Is it open with Chrome? Then they are all warnings or suggestions, 401. Compared to 400. See? It matches at least one of the reports. So confusing. Okay, but that's a problem that one's a problem for a different day. But for now, we now know that the artifacts are publishing correctly. So we got one set of artifacts that is in a folder called artifacts. Now, in theory, what we could do is we could collect those into a packages. So any and all nupkegs would go into one packages, and then the HTML goes into reports, something like that. I don't think that's needed just now, maybe later, but for now, it's essentially the same as what we've got on AppFair. So that's good. Now, the thing I need to look at now then is so if we look again at the output of this, and we look at Cake build, and we scroll down a little bit, then on Azure DevOps, it goes setup, export, release notes, show info. On this one, if we look at the console and scroll down, then it does setup, inspect code, report messages to CI, export, release notes. So those are fundamentally... Oh, why did it do that? They are fundamentally different in the order that they are executing in. Can I copy this? No, probably not. Where did it go? Ooh, maybe. Oh, it's just taken all of it, hasn't it? It's not necessarily what I wanted. I want this to this. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work with it. Well, let's try it this way. Copy. And let's do Notepad. We've got Notepad++. Let's put it in here just now anyway. Okay, we've got that one. And then the other one. I just want to look at them side by side basically and see what's what. So published documentation. You see? There's other differences as well. Copy. Notepad. Let's have a side by side and see what's going on. Interesting. And by interesting, I mean what? So let's move these down a bit. Probably a better way of doing this, but this is what I've got just now. The clean, .NET Core restore, .NET Core build, Dupe Finder. So inspect code is not there. And create issues report, but that is in the same place. So this one means if we bring that one down a bit, install report generator, install .NET test, create and get packages, create chocolate packages, .NET Core pack, upload artifacts, publish, clean documentation. So why are the upload coveralls report, upload code cov report, and the publish chocolate packages, why are those not even attempted on the other one? Because they should be. Did I just not copy the... Oh, I didn't copy them. So they are there. Fine. So that makes me feel a little bit better. So over here, so the only difference then is that, so this one, report messages to CI, that only happens on AppVeyor. Now that one I know about. So that one being there is fine, right? Oh. So that is the reason then. That is going to be the reason that it happens there. But we don't necessarily want it to happen in that order. Okay, so this makes a little bit more sense then. So if we look at AppVeyor, then or it's on the analyzing, isn't it? It's in here, I think, if I recall correctly. Dupe Finder, inspect code. No, it's not. Where's the thing I'm looking for? Thank you very much, Matthias. Appreciated. Matthias has just subscribed as a tier 1, and they've been subscribed for 6 months. Currently on a 6-month streak. Well, thank you very much, Matthias. If I copy this and do a wee search here, it was in there. So, okay, so this makes sense. So the report messages to CI is dependent on inspect code. And that is a dependee of continuous integration. But that's why it's jumping out. So if we go back to here and then look at here, then because of the graph that Cake is creating isn't pinning it to how do we do that? I don't want the static analysis, either the Dupe Finder or the inspect code, to run if the build doesn't work. That's effectively what I'm trying to achieve here. Now, the complexity comes in our build.cake file, because we can either be running a .NET Core build, or we can be running a non-.NET Core build. So the tasks are different. So you'll see here that there's this concept of a prefix. So in here, we're effectively saying that if we are a .NET Core build, then the prefix includes .NET Core, so it knows to find the .NET Core build as opposed to the build step. So I think what we want to do then is I want to add an additional, and we have it here. So why then dupe finder is dependent on build and inspect code is dependent on build. So why then, therefore, is inspect code not coming after that one? That makes no sense to me. Matthias, are you watching this or are you just kind of listening in the background? But what is dependent on them? Don't understand your question. Unless I've fundamentally missed something here. Inspect code task. So my understanding is that by specifying that inspect code is dependent on .NET Core build, then this inspect code here shouldn't run until this one's finished. But it's happening over here. So how come? Inspect code task is dependent on build. Yeah, that should work. I think. Inspect code is the inspect code task. And hold on, people. HUD the bus. That's broken. That's broken. The title's much broken. There's a little bug there. If I whisper, nobody will hear it, right? But there's a little bug. Inspect code task. Create issues report task. Do we have a create issues report task? What's in here? Create. There's no create issues report task. Yeah, it's overriding it, which I suspect will be breaking any other stuff going on. So, first of all, what we need then is we need to not call this inspect code task. This needs to be create issues report task. We need to copy that, and we need to create a task for that, which is going to be, let's just make sure I haven't got one somewhere else. That's the one I just created. Fine. So in task, we need now, let's put it in beside the dupe finder and where's the Duke Finder task? I can't see. That's it. It's right there. So let's do public cake task builder get and set. So that allows us to do that. That then has here. So create issues report task will have a dependency. I thought I saw that. Spec code task. I thought I saw a dependency on here. I must have made that up. Analyze is dependent on all of those things. Maybe. Oh, it's this one. No. No. Oh, I was sure that there was a dependency on there. Where are you seeing that? Did I? Oh, it was on Dupe Finder or Inspect Code. It was a dependee of, wasn't it? Inspect Code? I thought I saw it somewhere. Oh, it was that. That was it. So the report messages to there is dependent on there. I think that's wrong though. That is dependent on our new task, which is actually this one, create issues report. So that one is dependent on there, right? And then this one, the create issues report, is dependent on. Let's put it in here, and this is going to be on inspect code. And I don't know if Cake.Recipe, Cake.Issue, I don't know if Cake.Issues handles this yet. It doesn't do the add issues within the missing a ... I'll come back in a second. I was just gonna, yeah. So it's not dependent there. Oh, I am missing a ... Thank you. Right, is dependent on inspect code. Because at the minute, inspect code is the only one that is handled by Cake.Issues. Now that's a different issue. So what have we done? We have corrected the task name to be that, and we've called it inspect code, which is what the task is called, right? It is. At there, we have changed that dependency, and that should flow through. Okay, so let's do GH259 attempt to fix DAG, and we're going to say fix overriding of task that was using the same name. So let's do that, and let's get push upstream, and then let's do a get, where did the rest of that go? Get push origin. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Then if we go back to our CI, which is for Cake.Recipe, so that's gonna, this should be 137. No, it was just one commit, so it should just be 137, but we'll check that and we'll update our build here again. And then if this works, then the outstanding issue is why we're getting different inspect code results on when we run it locally compared to when we run it on AppVeyor and compared to when we run it on Azure DevOps. Because each of those is giving us a different set of problems, a different set of issues, which is not good. Now hold on. Oh, I was like, that's run far too fast, but it's not the one I was thinking it was. 137. So save that, and we'll say build use latest Cake.Recipe. Save that, and then push it up again. So git push upstream, and git push origin. But I'm not sure if I'll go ahead and try and track that down next. What I think I want to try, it won't be today because I'm running out of time, but what I want to try will be removing the environment variables from AppVeyor, adding them into Azure DevOps, and then see if the publish to myget works from here. I mean, in theory, it should. And as I mentioned earlier, having them being pushed from both doesn't make any sense because the generated artifacts have the same version number. But if for whatever reason you want to use Azure DevOps as your kind of nominated publishing location, then you should be able to do that now with the work that Vadim has done. But I haven't tested that yet. So let's see what the generated graph looks like for both of these, because they should be more similar than they were before. So let's put these side by side again so that we'll see what they look like. So let's get these ready. Let's take this one out, and we'll take this one out. So this is going to be Azure DevOps, and this is going to be AppVeyor. And we'll have a quick look. And then once this is done, I'm going to go and get some lunch. So fingers crossed, it will all just work. Now, AppVeyor won the build race last time in terms of how long the build took. Let's see if there's any difference this time round. So this has been running for 1 minute 43. This has been running for 1 minute. So they started at round about the same time. So let's see which one finishes first. But on this one already, I'm seeing the inspect code is coming after .NET Core build, so that's good, because it wasn't before. But it's got 401 errors again. Oh no, look. It's fixed it. It's fixed it because it's done the restore. So that was the difference. I think we could be onto something, people. One potential refactoring could be to have task not be myget, but pre-release feed. Yes, absolutely, Matthias. That is one of the open issues that I have. If we look over here and look at here, then there is remove reference to myget, and Admiring Worm put forward a number of different feed suggestions, whether it's nightly source, rolling source, build source, unstable source, or source of worms, which was my personal favorite. I think we should call it that. But also, but we should probably rename NuGet as well, because ultimately you might want to push to Azure Artifacts, or you might want to push to GitHub package repository. So we've got a very close coupling at the minute between MyGet and NuGet as the ultimate destinations. I think we need to change that. We need to change that to be something other. So yes, I have an issue tracking that. If you wanted to add your thoughts into that, that would be great. Because I had the same thought. So it's still, but I think this explains why the inspect code things were different, because it hadn't done the restore, and inspect code is looking at the actual code, compiled code. So I think that explains why that was. Yeah. Are you going to make me type in? Dev lead suggests production source, stable source for the NuGet equivalent. So the only slight caveat, at the minute, Cake.Recipe handles both NuGet packages and chocolate packages. Now, both of those could be, now at the minute, we've got a very close coupling of those to NuGet and chocolate. So I think what we might need is a NuGet production source and a chocolatey production source. Now, Cake.Recipe at the minute pushes both to the same. So it'll push both chocolate packages and NuGet packages to the same feed. It doesn't distinguish between the two. But it does make sense to do that when it's the production version, because one goes to NuGet.org, one goes to chocolate.org. Okay, so let's grab this again. So here's the teardown. Make sure we get everything again. So let's do this. And we'll put this into the AppVeyor one, which is this one. And then the Azure pipelines, which I think is just literally just finished. Yes, it has. Let's grab its information. Missed one. Let's try that again. Don't like the way that it sometimes jumps around. There we go. Copy. Paste. See? Create NuGet packages. Did that last time as well. Copy. I'm going to have a duplicate. So let's take that out. And let's do the side by side. So we've got setup, clean. Now, as I mentioned, where's the different show? Info. Oh. Where's the export? Export release notes is way down here now. Again, why is... Or maybe a package type prefix on settings variable. So, export release notes is being put up to here on Azure DevOps, but it's here when it is. So there's something not quite right with the DAG still. But anyway, I need to draw a line under this because it's almost time for me to go. So we're getting somewhere. We've now got, like I say, Cake.Recipe is now, in theory, Cake.Recipe is at a point where it will be usable as the publishing source when you're using Azure DevOps, where it wasn't before because it was very closely coupled to AppVeyor. I have Cake.Gitter running on both at the minute as a test, and I'm doing some side-by-side comparisons to try and figure out why one is working and the other isn't. And I'm getting close to a point where I'm happy with it, and my final test is going to be to remove the environment variables from AppVeyor and move them into Azure DevOps and see if that publishing cycle works like that. And if it does, I think I'll be happy to say that it's working. So, final comment is that from Mateus. So there's not an inflation in sources, but these tasks could be dynamically generated by setup build, so it's not copy paste same behavior. I think we need to have a chat about that, because at the minute I don't fully comprehend, and that's perfectly fine. But I've been thinking about other stuff, so I need to think about what you're saying there. But we need to have a chat about it. We also need to have a chat about other stuff as well, if your timetable allows. So I'm going to chat to you about that later. But for now, I'm going to sign off because it's getting time for me to go back to work. So thank you all for coming, spending your lunch hour with me. I hope it's been useful, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.